In a weird way, he is kind of running the show, but he's running the show remotely. This is, I think, Donald Trump's got a long track record of slagging off George Bush and Clinton and how they did regime change and how Obama did these things. And actually, there's a slightly more it's a more hands-off approach. But essentially, the piper's picking the tune because he is controlling Venezuela in quote marks with a very big stick.
Venezuela's new leader, Delcy Rodriguez, is being sworn in just hours before her predecessor, Nicolas Maduro, appears in court in New York. Over the weekend, the US launched airstrikes on Venezuela's capital, Caracas, before taking Maduro and his wife into custody and transporting them to America. Here is the US President Donald Trump speaking to reporters on Air Force One.
We were prepared to do a second strike if we needed. We're totally prepared.
But that's off the table.
We're still prepared.
That's off the table now.
No, it's not. If they don't behave, we will do a second strike.
Well, that was Donald Trump speaking on Air Force One. He's also told The Atlantic magazine that Rodriguez could pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro, if she doesn't do what is right. Harry Cole is editor-at-large for The Sun and presenter of Harry Cole Saves the West. He's usually in Washington, but I'm pleased to say he's here now in the studio. Hello, Harry.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being with us. Look, we've been reflecting on Donald Trump's unpredictability, yes. But Washington seems to have been as blindsided as the rest of the world by what happened over the weekend.
Well, the build-up has been in sort of months in the offing, moving aircraft carriers and troops and planes and the like to the Caribbean. There's clearly something was up. He'd sort of been hinting at it and making sort of public statements and threats, and obviously he's been blowing up these boats in a sort of legal grey area. These what he says are fentanyl boats and cocaine boats in the Caribbean. So it's not that it came out of the blue completely, but the shock and awe of the in-out extraction, whatever your views on it, clearly done pretty successfusly in the middle of the night. I think they were planning on doing it on Christmas Day, but the weather stopped it. I think, that obviously was a surprise. There were a couple of news outlets, it's emerged, that did sort of get a wind of it, but no one got wind of it, I don't think, anything more than minutes or hours before sort of wheels up. But now it's sort of it's sort of back to school for everyone in Westminster, back to school in DC. I'll be back there in a couple of days. Now they're sort of feasting on the carcass of this great sort of moment, and it's sort of splitting into sort of three unique scenes. I think you're going to have the political fallout. We'll talk about Keir Starmer in a moment, I'm sure, and his sort of awkward position he's in. Then you've got what happens in Caracas with this. I think it's kind of scotching this is regime change because they are essentially
because the regime is still there.
The regime is still there, and I think that's probably sensible because what we've learned from dropping democracy from the sky over the last 40, 50 years is actually that initial vacuum is the most dangerous time. So actually keeping the regime infrastructure in place, keeping the army in place is probably sensible, as long as it does get onto a pathway to elections.
So I've got to ask you about that, because Donald Trump himself was saying in the aftermath of this military operation, and look, full agreement, incredibly impressive military operation. I mean, America's military being able to do astonishing things is not new, but one is still impressed afresh, when they pull off something like this. Nonetheless, Donald Trump did say pretty clearly several times, we are going to be running Venezuela. Given what the situation now is, they are not running Venezuela. They have no troops on the ground. The Venezuelan regime is still there, having just moved down a tier. Do we see that as being... Is he talking nonsense? Is he talking aspirationally? Is he just rambling? I mean, what's happening there?
I think he was talking directly to the regime, which is, you can see what we can do. We all saw it play out live on X and social media. And imagine what it was like being on the receiving end of that. That could have been the opening salvo. So I think in a way, when he says we are running the show, it's you dance to our tune, you play by our rules. But
that's not what he said. He said we're going to be coming in there and selling your oil.
Which he essentially is, because the oil companies are going to go back and reclaim their infrastructure. He's saying he's basically saying if you get in our way of what we want to do, things are going to get very bad for you. And obviously, the vice president came out. She made lots of noise on the first day. She's being sworn in today, but she is saying, well, we are cooperating. So in a weird way, he is kind of running the show, but he's running the show remotely. This is, I think, Donald Trump's got a long track record of slagging off George Bush and Clinton and how they did regime change and how Obama did these things. And actually there's a slightly more it's a more hands-off approach, but essentially the piper's picking the tune because he is controlling Venezuela in quote marks with a very big stick.
But it remains she's a hardline socialist, the president. It remains a Chavista regime.
Slightly more complicated woman, I think, than Maduro, who was, a sort of paint by numbers commie thug. She has been credited with turning around what was the utter basket case of Venezuela's oil economy into slightly less of a bucket. She's clearly, and my cynicism and slice of journalistic instincts, and if your ears will be pricking up and eyes will be pricking at this, is she's clearly been talking to them already. The fact is, they were so quick to sort of say at that press conference, that remarkable Mar-a-Lago press conference the other day, that she was in control.
The fact that they've sidelined the opposition as well.
Exactly, which I think again is a little bit, it's real politics that you don't want to create a vacuum. If your ultimate goal is to get a more conservative opposition or government into Venezuela, coming out the day after you've just taken out Maduro and saying this woman should be it is the quickest and easiest way to stop turn people against it. It does. I think we're still in that sort of stage where the monopoly board is still up in the air.
I get what you're saying. I've got to hit it one more time though.
Go on.
If your whole thing, if you are the White House, if you're Donald Trump, your whole thing here is we take out the president, we let this other woman take over in the knowledge that she's going to do what we tell her to.
Yes.
Why do you then, in the interim, before these two things becoming clear, say we're going to send in our people and make out like Marco Rubio is going to be sort of the viceroy of Venezuela or whatever? I mean, it's a really
to add to his many other jobs.
It's just a really weird way to allow the narrative to develop.
It was, but then that is the sort of Donald Trump predictable way. Was that on the script? We will never know.
Yeah.
Is that part of the game plan, or is it actually was he talking to her as much as the regime as much as anyone else? Of you play ball or things get very ugly very quickly, and it's sort of it's sort of the sword of Damocles, the sort of Trumpocles hanging over them.
I think you're a charitable soul, Harry Cole. One more question on this before I let you go. The fact that they launched this military action without any consultation or information given to Congress. Is that going to come back and bite them?
Well, there is precedent for military operations that genuinely cannot leak. Can do it. I think they will. Obviously, the Democrats' Christmas has come late for them. They are going to be all over this. They've actually been struggling since November for a clear sort of narrative to really attack the Trump administration. They're still kind of punch drunk and leaderless and reeling from last November. So this will allow them to crystallise over something very simple of black and white illegality. You have done something wrong. That said, and then it takes us to the third sort of part of this sort of show that we're watching today, which takes us to the New York courtroom. I think if down the line in a year's time Maduro is somehow found innocent of these charges, that's going to put the administration into a very, very, very tricky spot, because what the hell do you do with this guy?
Yeah, for sure.
At the end of the day, he's not running Venezuela anymore, and I think that's probably what they've taken into account. I do think there'll be a big old row about it, but US presidents taking military action outside of congressional oversight is not new.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I suspect there'll be lots of shouting about it, but ultimately there's midterms in November. Will we still be rowing about it then? Possibly. Will that be an issue that voters go to the polls over? We'll have to wait and see, but I suspect most voters will probably look at that and think, fair play.
Harry Cole, thank you very much indeed. Good to speak to you. And you can watch Harry Cole Save the West on YouTube and hear it on Talk every Monday night at 10 p.m. as well. Thank you, Harry.